Okay. Well, hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to see you all. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is James Howell, as Laurie mentioned, and I have the pleasure of getting to work with all of our donors, with many of you, and with our amazing NCR team. So I like to think I have the best job at NCR because I get to talk to people who tell us how much NCR impacts them and positively makes a difference in their lives. So I'm thrilled to be able to do that. I am so happy to be here with Mike O'Loughlin, our new executive editor. I will give you a little bit of his bio, and then I've taken some of the questions you've all sent in. I've combined some of them because many of them were very similar, and we'll kind of walk through some of the questions. And as Laurie said, there will be a time where I will take more questions at the end. So feel free to put those in the chat. So before joining NCR in January, just last month, Mike O'Loughlin was the executive director of Outreach, the LGBTQ Catholic organization founded by Father James Martin. He was also national correspondent for America. He was with Jesuit Review and a former staff writer for the Boston Globe and its Catholic site Crux. His writing has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, The Washington Post, Foreign Policy, and The Advocate. He's been interviewed by a number of media outlets, including NPR, BBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, and MS Now. He frequently gives talks on a range of Catholic issues, and he's also the author of Hidden Mercy, Catholic AIDS and Untold Stories of Compassion in the Face of Fear, which I just finished reading and is a fantastic read. So please check that out. So welcome, Mike. First question, we'll make it easy. What is something about you that I didn't read out of your bio that you think people would be interested to know?
Sure. Yeah. No, thank you, James, for agreeing to be a conversation partner. And thank you, Laurie, for putting this together. Thanks, everyone, for being here. It was fun seeing some familiar faces and names, I've known for a little while, folks I'm just getting to meet through the NCR community. It's good to be here with you. Looking forward to answering your questions. We are actually right now, we're at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. Normally, we're not working together. I live and work in Rhode Island, and James is up in Northern California. But we're here working together on some fundraising strategies for NCR to make sure that we can keep doing this important work into the future. So it's nice to have a day working together, and it just so happened to be today when we'd be doing this conversation too. So it all worked out nicely. In terms of something that might surprise people or something that's not in my official bio, I thought I would just tell you a little bit about myself. So I live, like I said, in Rhode Island with my husband, Matt, and our 4-year-old Bernese Mountain Dog. And one kind of funny thing about the dog, we adopted this dog about 4 years ago. We needed a name for it. And the background of this dog breed is they're from Switzerland. And being a good Catholic household, we wanted to name the dog after a saint from Switzerland. And there's not a lot of Catholic female saints we learned. We were doing research. So we settled on Saint Wiberata, and we shortened that to Wibby. And I was pleasantly surprised. Wiberata was the patron saint of libraries. She protected a monastery's library during an invasion. So we have this cute dog named Wibby, which sort of made me realize how important dogs are to people. It was my first dog. And that led to me interviewing a bishop, Bishop Daniel Flores of Texas, who was tweeting a lot about his own dog. And there was a story back in 2022, around the time I got a dog, where Pope Francis made headlines by saying that dogs probably would not go to heaven, despite popular belief. So I called Bishop Flores and said, "You're a bishop who loves dogs. You love your own dog. What do you make of this?" And he kind of laughed at the prospect of a journalist devoting time to understanding what a bishop thinks about dogs in heaven. He ultimately agreed with Pope Francis that dogs probably won't go to heaven, but that didn't stop him or me from loving our dogs any less. So kind of a silly little story, but it was a fun way to kind of bring some levity to an otherwise heavy news cycle a few years ago.
Wow. And what was the saint's name again?
Saint Wiberata, a Benedictine nun from the 10th century.
All right. I'm going to have to make a note and research. So you are stepping into this role at a really interesting time in journalism and for the church. What drew you to this, and how have you found your first month here at NCR?
Yeah, so I have a fairly long career in journalism at this point. I began writing as a freelancer right out of grad school. I studied theology at Yale, but I really wanted to do journalism. So I actually interned at America, the Jesuit magazine, then did freelancing for a number of years while working in the Catholic nonprofit space. My first full-time journalism job was at the Boston Globe back in 2014. They had launched a website called Crux, which was exploring the Catholic Church in the United States as well as Rome. I was working with the now late John Allen, who was sort of overseeing our broader coverage. I worked there for about 2 years. It was a master class in understanding the church. John was a gracious colleague. Of course, he's a familiar name to many NCR readers. He helped explain the Vatican in ways that very few people can. It helped me meet church leaders, just someone who really lived and breathed the Catholic Church, and he helped train a number of young journalists, and I'm glad that I was able to be part of that cohort. That project lasted for a couple of years. Eventually, the Globe spun Crux off. John took over. I ended up leaving around that time and taking on my reporting job at America, the Jesuit magazine. And I came on full time right as the 2016 election was shaping up. So it was a really important time in our country. It obviously, we didn't know at the time, but was set the track for the next decade of political life in the United States. And I began to see much more clearly the important role that the Catholic Church played in the public square, what bishops were saying and thinking, what ordinary Catholics were believing, how Catholic activists were helping to shape public thought around very difficult and complex political moral questions. I stayed in that role for about 7 years. I had the privilege of going to the Vatican many times to report on especially the exciting years, the kind of early years of Pope Francis trying to figure out what he was up to with his pontificate. It was a formative time for me as a Catholic, as a journalist. It was especially interesting time for the church as well. From there, I moved over to helping run or running outreach, the LGBT ministry that Father Jim Martin started. And I would say one of the interesting things for me at this moment is coming back into journalism full time, leading this great team of editors and writers at NCR at a time when I think that this kind of journalism has never been more important. We, of course, are living through the election of a new pope with Pope Leo. What does it mean to have an American pope during a particularly tumultuous time in American society? Looking at threats to democracy, we're covering certainly what's going on with the Trump administration on a daily basis. We have original reporting every day. Also, long term, looking ahead to the elections. And then understanding the role that people of faith are playing in this moment. So I would say what drew me to this particular job was the long history of NCR in covering these kinds of stories very well, in holding powerful people in the church and society to account, and then finding ways to serve the loyal NCR community with fresh story ideas, fresh ways of delivering content to our readers, and really growing our audience. So I think the chance to work with the journalists at NCR to help shape coverage at this very important time in our church and our society, that's what drew me to this particular job.
Awesome. And how's your first month been? Anything surprised you?
Yeah, it's I just gave an update to the NCR board last week, and there were questions about my editorial vision, and I was sort of laughing because I said, "Well, I've been in the job for a month so far, so that's very much still in development." But my pledge to the board was, by the time my first 3 months are over, so at the end of March, I will have a cohesive editorial vision that will be laid out in a column that'll be published in the paper and online. So it was a bit of a stall tactic, but also very true. I'm working on talking to readers, talking to the team, talking to board members, to our benefactors, really understanding what it is that they love about NCR, what we do well, areas where we can grow. And I think for me, having that opportunity to really engage in this deep listening with the NCR community is an opportunity to reflect deeply on how we can continue to do this important work. So in terms of what surprised me, a couple things. One is a pleasant surprise, just the extent that the NCR community is deeply engaged and deeply cares about the history of the newspaper, but also the future of how we cover the church in the United States. It's really nice to have received emails from longtime readers, encouragement from benefactors and board members who really want to see NCR thrive and continue to do excellent quality journalism. So that's been a pleasant surprise, just that deep engagement that I'm happy that there's this network of folks that I can rely on as a sounding board for ideas and inspiration. That was a nice surprise. An interesting surprise to me, I had mentioned sort of in a little bit of my bio how I'd been covering the church in the United States for 7 or 8 years, which meant I was deeply plugged into kind of the everyday goings on of bishops, of what was happening in parish life, where Catholics were on social issues. And for a couple of years, I had been focused on kind of a more niche part of Catholic life in the United States, namely reaching out to the LGBT community, their friends, families, which meant my lens had sort of narrowed a bit in terms of what I was up on. So coming back after 2 years into this broader sort of what's happening in the church has been really interesting just to see all the energy that's there, the new faces, there's new leadership. I was in New York last week covering the installation of the new Archbishop Ronald Hicks there, sort of a changing of the guard. I wrote about in a column that was published last week, going from Cardinal Dolan, a sort of larger than life media figure, to someone new, a fresh face, someone who had been relatively kind of flying under the radar in terms of the wider US hierarchy. So it was an interesting time just for me to come into this role, be at this installation mass in New York, and just realize a lot has changed in 2 years in exciting ways and challenging ways, and to be able to see how much there is to catch up on, how much energy and enthusiasm there is in the church right now. That's been an interesting surprise and one that I've actually enjoyed quite a bit as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I know you mentioned that you're still working through sort of what the editorial vision looks like. But our most asked question from members was, what issues is NCR going to focus on in the coming year and why? So you've probably given that a little thought. Any preview you can give us?
Yes, I was glad to see this was the most asked question because it was also the most asked question by board members. So if you see me glancing to my computer over here, it's because I have a board presentation that I gave last week that I'll be drawing some of the answers from. So what do we plan on covering? So I sort of had been thinking about this in the weeks leading up to starting at NCR, and then of course after consulting with the team, with our readers, I sort of focused into three different areas that I want to see our coverage continue to excel at. So the first is the independent news reporting that NCR is known for. This is sort of the accountability journalism, exploring current events. Today, we're awaiting a story later today and tomorrow about how Catholics are marking Ash Wednesday. Part of that is a group of Catholics in Chicago who will be processing to an ICE detention center where they'll hope to go inside in order to distribute ashes to detainees there. And that kind of looking at current events and how we report those. That's the bread and butter of NCR that we'll continue to do. We have a great team of reporters. We're hoping that to add to that team in the future. We'll work with freelancers, columnists. We'll have some exciting news about columnists coming on. People that help make sense of current events. That's the kind of journalism NCR is known for, independent of any institutional bias. We are free to do the kind of reporting that our readers expect. And that's the bucket that will probably remain the focus of what we do. The news that you're used to at NCR, that will continue on. That will be especially important as we head to the midterm elections, some troubling signs that they might not be as smooth as they should be. The White House putting pressure on state and local election officials. What are Catholics doing to counter some of that, to ensure that there's access? Of course, continuing to cover the immigration challenges. Generally, I think the rise of authoritarianism is something that the church is beginning in some powerful and inspiring ways to confront. We have an editorial going up this week looking at how bishops have spoken out. So that focus on hard news, on the role of Catholics in the public square, accountability journalism, keeping everyone up to date on current events, helping to interpret and analyze that. That's where the primary focus of coverage will be. We also want to explore stories of hope. And by that, I'm looking at folks who understand that these times are challenging, both inside the church. We're looking at demographic changes. We're looking externally at some of the threats to democracy in terms of where the church's life is. We're exploring that. At the same time, we don't want to forget that as Christians, we're entering Lent and then Easter. We are people of hope. As Catholics, we want to feel inspired by the news that we're reading. So in addition to some of that harder news, we're focused on stories of hope. And it doesn't mean we're shying away from hard news. One recent example is a statement from three Catholic cardinals who were calling out the Trump administration for some what they saw as negative developments in foreign policy. I think those three cardinals speaking up, it kind of broke through the noise and gave a lot of Catholics hopes that there were church leaders engaged in the world and trying to bring gospel values to the debate. And so, even though it was sort of a dark time in the news cycle, it was a hopeful time in terms of being a Catholic and seeing leaders trying to make a difference. And then the third bucket, which will probably be the smallest bucket, but I think it's important nonetheless, are these joyful Catholic stories, stories that people can turn to that offer a bit of respite from an otherwise kind of hard news cycle. We were laying out the paper a couple of weeks ago and looking at kind of the big picture of what we had covered the last couple of weeks, what we wanted to put into the print edition. And it was really heavy stuff because this was at a time when the crisis in Minneapolis was strongest. There were these disturbing developments on foreign policy. It was really heavy story and or a heavy news cycle, and the stories reflected that. It was going to be a fairly heavy issue. And I said to the team, is there something lighter we can put in the paper? And they sort of laughed and responded, well, have you seen the news? And I said, yes, that's exactly why. We need to give something a little fun, something to keep people coming back. People need to smile in spite of all this. So looking at kind of more offbeat stories that we can cover. There was a great recent example by one of our reporters, Brian Rowe, looking at a chapel made of snow and ice at Notre Dame that had attracted a couple thousand students to an outdoor mass in the middle of winter. Admittedly, not going to make a big difference in terms of the global or even national news beat, but it was something fun that drew people there. So those are the three buckets, sort of the hard news, looking at stories of hope, and then some kind of joyful, offbeat Catholic stories. Now, all that said, we of course are continuing to cover Pope Leo. I think based on the numbers we're seeing, their feedback from readers, that is a story that our readers are certainly interested in, having a Pope from Chicago at a time, a challenging time in the United States. So focusing on the Vatican, focusing on the institutional church here in the United States, and then also really paying attention to this moment in the church where the laity are not only feeling empowered, but having been asked by Pope Francis and now by Pope Leo to really contribute to the church in unique and novel ways. So that's a landscape. Like I said, I'll be laying this out in a more cohesive manner for a column that will come out sometime in March.
Awesome. Thank you. NCR is obviously Catholic. We've remained independent and credible for more than 60 years. How do you protect those values, especially now, sort of in this polarizing time we find ourselves in?
Yeah, one thing that we hear time and time again from our readers when we ask what they value about NCR is our independence, that we can report on the news, we can invite columnists and editorials and opinion writers to give their thoughts on the news, we can provide analysis without any worry about offending any part of the institution, without being told what to do by private donors. That independence is tantamount to what we do. And that is a focus that I am 100% committed to ensuring that independent news remains the crux of everything that we cover. In terms of this moment for the Catholic Church, for ordinary Catholics, I think we need to commit to reporting on that news while also remembering the values that shaped NCR. I've been fortunate to be given access to a large amount of reading material about the history of NCR when I first started. And there was this real sense when NCR was founded 61 years ago now, of how do we take these values from the Second Vatican Council and put them into practice through a journalistic lens. And that's something that I'm committed to. And I think some of those coverage areas is a way that we do that. So really not failing to hold leaders to account, but also helping to amplify their message when we see them weighing in on public policy questions in a thoughtful and inspiring way. Looking at what are some of the cultural and demographic changes taking place in the church right now here in the United States. We're seeing young people maybe returning to the church. There's some debate about how big those numbers are, but there's some kind of movement taking place where young adults, particularly young men, are rediscovering Catholicism, but maybe coming in through channels that give them a different flavor than what NCR readers might be used to. How do we engage those those young people and understand what drew them to the church and maybe offer them a perspective that maybe is a little different than what they've become used to. The flip side of that is we're seeing women fall away from the church in at a more rapid pace and in larger numbers than we have in the past. Why is that happening? Is there a way to engage with women who maybe were involved at one point but no longer feel welcome? What's happening culturally in the church in the United States that could offer us some clues? Looking at the fastest growing segments of the church, Latino populations, people who are turning to the church for a sense of grounding during rapid advances in AI. That's some of what we're hearing from Pope Leo, warning us of the challenges of AI to the human person, to labor markets. What does that mean for spirituality? So I think it's sort of going back to our roots of coming out of a very exciting time of change in the church and then applying those values to what's happening in the church today, even if it's very different issue to issue than what was going on back when NCR was founded.
Great. Um, and you sort of alluded to this, but I'd love to learn a little bit more. The audience would. Obviously, NCR reaches multiple generations of readers. We are seeing our largest numbers of readers to date, really blowing past some past records on that. In this landscape, technological landscape, everything going on, what is NCR doing to make sure that it continues to reach new audiences and as many people as possible?
It's a great question, and it's germane to the work we're doing here today, actually. How do we take this really valuable reporting and make sure that it reaches the people who need to hear it? That's, of course, our loyal readers, the folks on this call, members who support what we're doing. Also, people who are interested in Catholicism. How do we reach them? How do we get our content in front of them? People who are maybe skeptical of Catholicism, who are maybe hanging on by a thread. I've heard from a number of readers who say that in many ways, NCR is sort of their lifeline to the church, that they haven't been able to find a parish that speaks to them, and the content that we publish, the culture, the opinion, the spirituality pieces really keeps them involved in the church. So I feel it as a duty really to make sure that not only we're producing good content and that it's reaching our kind of core audience, but that we're really reaching out and figuring out innovative ways to make sure that this content is being brought to other people. So some of that will be innovative audio, video projects, investing down the line in our social media, making sure that we are present in the spaces where people are consuming content, which might look very different than a really reported 1,000, 1,200 word piece that's published in print. That we still need to do, but then how do you deliver that content to people in ways that they can consume it? And one thing that stuck with me is this sense of hesitancy to be in spaces for news organizations generally to be in spaces that aren't conducive to the traditional means of reporting information. So I'm thinking of kind of short, chopped up videos, maybe of that don't do a good job of capturing the nuances or complexities of a particular story, but it's where people are consuming information. And if NCR isn't there, other publications covering the same beat are there. And they're not always as independent as we are. They're not always as attuned to detail or nuance as we are. So we have to figure out ways to continue to do the kind of reporting that takes lots of investment in terms of time and resources that traditionally has been consumed by people with long attention spans who really want to dig down to issues. And then how do we take that content and make it available to people who are consuming information in different ways? So there's no magic solution. The industry as a whole is still figuring this out. I've had the opportunity to talk to journalists, executives at peer organizations, at very large legacy media organizations. And I know that there's not a single solution out there. It's not a matter of size, a matter of resources. Everyone is sort of figuring out both how do we get our information to our loyal readers, how do we grow our audiences, and trying to navigate the rapid changes that are expected with AI that we're already seeing play out in workplaces and media spaces. So there's a lot of work ahead. I'm grateful to be with a talented team of journalists, advancement folks, Joe on the publishing side, who are really committed to making sure that this kind of journalism continues, and then also that we're finding ways to bring it to people in ways that they want to consume our information.
Fantastic. And you actually, I saw a question come in from one of the participants, and you just spoke to it. So I thought this might be a good time to sort of keep going with it. How do you envision making the best use of AI in NCR journalism?
It's a great question. I think that I am currently probably more on Pope side about recognizing some of the dangers of AI, particularly around sort of erasing the human element when it comes to all sorts of areas in life. Uh, at the same time, it's inevitable that AI will play a role in journalism, for good and bad. Maybe on the more negative side, there was a story out yesterday that traditional newspaper, a local newspaper, was actually starting to offload writing to AI. So reporters would gather facts, upload the facts, and let AI write the actual story. NCR is not doing that. That is not an example of how we will use AI. It's simply an example of how AI is starting to be used in newsrooms. I think there'll be some, I think, lower level applications. AI we've seen is helpful. It's a helpful tool in sorting through data. It can be a helpful tool in helping with some design elements, some copy editing, things like that. Very early stages here at NCR. We're currently wrapping up an ethics document, part of it which is related to how we can use AI. And I would say the guiding principle at this point is transparency in what we do. So promising our readers that should AI enter into our reporting, our editing, our design, that folks know about it, and that it's a sort of a journey that we're all on together as we look at how AI influences newsrooms. I would say even above that kind of guiding principle is a deep skepticism of this technology. I think it is inevitable that it will be incorporated into different parts of daily work life, including journalism. We're not exempt from the rest of forces, but a deep skepticism in removing the human element too much from this important and creative work that we do together.
Great, thank you. What what excites you most about the future of Catholic journalism? Even amid all these challenges and sort of the environment we're in, you just talked about AI a little bit. What excites you the most, and then what do you see as the biggest challenge in the years ahead?
I think that what excites me most about Catholic journalism in general is seeing the energy and enthusiasm that is still there in Catholic parishes, high schools, colleges, universities across the country. When my book Hidden Mercy came out, I was able to embark on a 75 stop book tour, which brought me into Catholic parishes, hospitals, colleges and universities, different nonprofit organizations. And there's this deep love for the church by from Catholics of all walks of life who are active volunteering, who are involved in their parish, and they want to understand the wider institution, how it works, how it functions, how it plays a part in the public square over these important policy debates, political questions. And that always gave me hope because on the news side, which is important, you do hear a story of decline, a story of scandal, a story of division, all stories that are true and need to be covered and understood, but it can get sort of deflating after a while. I think if you are only focused on that side of Catholic journalism and are not able to find ways into the actual spaces where Catholics are living out their faith lives, you can become deflated. So for me, I made it a point during the book tour for Hidden Mercy, and then also as I was leading outreach, as I was a reporter at America, now at NCR, to get out into the spaces where people are living their lives and understand the stories of Catholicism in the United States. So that's one area that gives me hope. And I think that our reporters are committed to that as well. They want to be out on the road doing stories. They want to be talking to people, understanding the importance of faith to them. In terms of Catholic media, I think NCR is at a opportune point in its history. In terms of independent Catholic media coverage, non-biased, committed to traditional journalism styles, within Catholic media, NCR is at an advantage right now. The landscape has shifted. Diocesan papers are struggling a lot. The dioceses still have them, are trying to figure out how to they communicate, and many of them are choosing to forego having newspapers. The closure of Catholic News Service a couple of years ago created something of a vacuum in terms of some solid reporting about what's happening on the ground. So I think NCR has some challenges, like every other media organization, particularly around attracting new readers to our product, having the resources to invest in the newsroom. There's great people working on these challenges, but we do have this opportunity, I think, to fill some of that space where there were other organizations reporting on the Church of the United States. So that's what I'm looking forward to is how do we find the resources we need to invest in the reporters and then sort of unleash them to go out, explore what Catholics are doing for good and bad when it comes to news and working with our folks in-house and some external partners to bring those stories to the widest possible audience.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to move to some of the participant questions that you submitted. Uh, let's start with any suggestions to promote synodality without annoying those who seem to have a different understanding of that concept, given my sense that involving all the people of God is crucial if the church is to survive.
Yeah, this is a great question and something that came up during the board meeting as well, and will be a focus of the column laying out the editorial vision, is this notion of synodality that Pope Francis championed so much in the later years of his papacy, and something that Pope Leo seems to be on board with as well. We haven't seen as sketched out a plan for synodality from Pope Leo yet, but he is modeling it. We saw it even with his consistory of bringing cardinals to the Vatican from all around the world. They engaged in a synodal style, which was probably one of the clearest signs that he wants to implement this. And he's also spoken about how he intends to continue this practice of focusing on synodality. So I think what that means for us at NCR is one, it's in many ways, even though we're independent, secular, covering the Catholic Church, it's how we do our work. It's in a collaborative style. We want to be listening both to our team, but also our readers. We're engaging in that kind of deep dialogue that Pope Francis talked about, and Pope Leo seems to be championing as well. And then I think it's also a reality of life, of Catholic life here in the United States today. The number of priests continues to diminish as the Catholic population remains fairly stable. So that means that lay people and clergy and bishops have to find a way to work together in order for the institution to continue providing the sacraments to believers, offering social safety net charity programs to all sorts of people, running schools, hospitals, food pantries, different charities. That kind of synodal work will have to take place, just given the reality of the number of clergy available to serve lay people. So I think by focusing on covering just the reality of Catholic life in the United States, if we can attach a synodal lens to that, that's great. We can be explicit about what we're covering, but even just implicitly covering the structures and reality of Catholic life in the United States, it will be through a synodal lens because that's how life has to be lived here. And then, of course, Justin McClellan, our correspondent at the Vatican, is especially attuned to both what Pope Francis was teaching about this and now how Pope Leo intends to live it out or not. So we'll be covering that kind of at the top in the Vatican and then here how it's being played out in the United States.
Great. Speaking of sort of how Pope Leo is continuing some of the things that Pope Francis put into place, this member is interested in LGBTQ issues and the continuation of Pope Francis's pastoral style.
Sure, it's a good question. When I was running outreach, of course, our focus was on LGBTQ Catholics. And in many ways, there was no better ally than Pope Francis. He literally wrote letters to our community in support. He met regularly with Father Jim Martin, who founded Outreach. And it was just clear that there was an ally in the Pope. He was certainly only willing to go so far. He didn't change much in terms of church teaching, but he created a space where dialogues around LGBT issues could take place, where people felt like they were welcome, even if church teaching around these issues didn't seem like it was going to change much, and ultimately it didn't. I think with Pope Leo, it's a little more complicated. He seems to, in general, kind of zooming out from the LGBT issue, he seems to be someone who wants to heal divisions within the church. We see that in the people he meets with, the organizations he meets with. There seems to be almost a balance of if he meets someone who's perhaps associated with what might be called the Catholic left, maybe a week or two later, there'll be someone he meets with who is associated with the Catholic right. And that seems to be what's happening with LGBT issues as well. He met with Father Jim Martin several months ago, which was seen as a sign that maybe he was on board with Jim's project of making the church more welcoming to LGBT people. But just a couple of weeks ago, he met with representatives from Courage, which is the church's official LGBTQ ministry, which preaches a different message. It's heavier on emphasizing the chastity aspect of teaching on homosexuality rather than the everyone should be welcome side of things. So, sort of a an attempt, I think, to reach out to both sides of the issue to say you're welcome in this one institution. So I think that on the whole, LGBT Catholics I'm hearing from are cautiously optimistic that there's no signs that he's intending to crack down on organizations like Outreach or New Ways Ministry. But he's also meeting with other organizations that maybe take a different approach to this issue. So we'll see. In general, Leo doesn't seem to have the same flair for dramatic gestures like Pope Francis has. There's a great piece by Justin McClellan up a couple of weeks ago at NCR's website looking at how Pope Leo is communicating messages more broadly. He seems to be stepping back from engaging with the media directly. Like I said, these grand gestures seem to be maybe not his preferred communication style. So on this issue, those are the two ways that Francis primarily signaled his openness to LGBT Catholics and their families. If Pope Leo is not going that route, we have to figure out how will he communicate what he thinks about these issues. And I think we're under a year into his pontificate. I think we're still waiting to see what that might be like on this issue and a whole range of other issues.
Great, thanks. Would you share, this member is curious a little bit more about sort of the structure of the editorial team. How many full part-time staff do you have? How many writers? How's the staff organized, especially since we've got folks all over the world, quite honestly, working? Just
Yeah, it's a great
about that.
question and one that I'm still wrapping my own head around. Based on the amount of content that we put out each day through our newsletters, on our website, on our social media, in the paper, it honestly it looks like a much larger staff than it is. We get a lot of content out there. Everyone's working really hard. We hope to be able to find resources to bring on more reporters, more editors, more contributors in different capacities. But for now, it's a small but mighty folks group of folks who are doing professional work every day, and that's why the ultimate product is what it is. So, in terms of kind of getting inside how NCR works, as the executive editor, I meet with a group of editors on a regular basis. We talk through coverage areas, what we want to cover that day, longer term hopes in terms of different stories or themes, series, different things like that. We have a news editor who works with our four reporters, a managing editor who sort of keeps everything running on time, culture editor, online editor, an assistant opinion editor. And we, in addition to having our in-house team of reporters, Brian Fraga, Brian Rowe, Camilo Barone, and Justin McClellan, we also work with contributors, folks who pitch us story ideas, freelancers from around the country and around the world. Justin McClellan, as I said, is covering Rome. He's doing a great job. Really helping to make sense of this new pontificate and what it means for the wider church. He has a great story up today looking at how Pope Leo is using some decisions about Lent, people he's picking to preach retreats where he's having meetings, who he's meeting with, to signal some broader pastoral priorities. So it's really it's a network of staff on the team, and then a broader network of contributors and columnists and analysts submitting content to us. So we are always making sure that we're trying to capture the broader picture of what's happening here in the United States when it comes to Catholicism, ordinary Catholics through priests, clergy, nuns, sisters, bishops, and then also when we can, bringing a kind of global perspective to at least give us some insight into what's happening around the world. We have some great freelancers who submit pieces from around the world, and then focusing, of course, on the Vatican and how that all sort of interacts. So it's a messy process like journalism is. There's a million more stories we could do each week, but ultimately our goal is to have fresh content every day published on the website, made available through social media, and then delivered still through print to our most loyal readers.
Great. So it's really just a handful of staff.
Yeah, I mean, we have for a Catholic media publication, we have a good sized staff. I would say we're right on target with some of our peer publications in the Catholic world. But the energy that's there for growth means we got to find the resources to be able to continue to invest in our newsroom with writers, editors, reporters.
Great. And this question also has another little section to it around how solid is NCR financially? And so I'll give you a little break and take that one. So NCR is, has been here for 60 some odd years, and we're here because of the donors and the members who support the publication and have for some time. Because we are independent, that means that we are looking for dollars each and every day to continue that. I will say NCR is on a very solid footing. In the next month or so, we'll actually be announcing a little bit more about that and how we are putting the steps in place to ensure a strong endowment so that we can continue NCR well into the future. But yeah, I think we're certainly in a solid place. But with journalism, with the continuing to sort of see less reliance on print journalism, we're having to evolve, and that costs money. So it's certainly a work in progress and one that we're very grateful to have all of our members and donors support. One other thing, you sort of hinted that new columnists might be introduced soon. What gaps are you trying to fill, or what's your hope with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll just say one thing to the previous question. When a new leader comes on, of course, when folks are trying to get an idea of what their priorities might be, they're kind of looking at early decisions. And I will say that one of my earliest decisions was reaching out to James and asking how can I be helpful to advancement efforts, because I know that the rapidly changing media landscape is a challenge for every news organization, whatever you're covering. And I know that in order for us to do this job well, we have to find resources. We have to work with partners, whether it's foundations, individual donors, our readers offering a little something extra on top of the subscription. And I want to make sure that we're working hand in hand, not so that we are allowing donors to shape the kind of coverage we do, but so that the kind of coverage we do, when it's appealing to donors who want to support that mission, we are always communicating that kind of work. So investing in the future of NCR means working to bring the news of the kind of coverage that we do to as many people with resources as possible and hoping that there's good matches along the way. So that is an important part of my job as well, is making sure that we are reaching folks who can invest in the future of it. In terms of columnists, not quite ready to announce who's coming on board yet, but we are working to find a great group to announce in the next several weeks. In terms of coverage, I would say there's not gaps necessarily. It's more looking at some of the goals I have for NCR in terms of coverage and how can we expand on that. So again, Vatican, Pope Leo having the first American Pope, really committing to covering developments in the United States, and then also looking at underserved or underreported communities of growth, the kind of the future of the church demographically, and how we might go about covering events important to those communities. So there'll be an announcement, hoping in the next few weeks, of some new voices. There's also the crop of contributors who continue to write for NCR. At this point, we benefit from having folks like Michael Sean Winters, Dan Haran, Christine Schneck. There's a whole group of folks that have been doing this important work for quite a while that our readers rely on, and we're looking to add some voices to that. So I'm excited to see where this goes. We'll be collecting feedback, looking for input from our readers about the coverage areas, whether it's reporting or columnists.
Great, thank you. This member has a question about what pressures, if any, and I know you're only a month in, but what pressures, if any, do you get from external forces about what to cover and how to cover the news, and how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think by always having as our North Star independence, that it makes it easier because we aren't saying that we're going to cover one area or theme because this donor or this church authority asked us to do that. Generally and always, we go back to our independence, that we cover what we think is news of the day that's important to our readers, offering analysis and commentary in a thoughtful and engaged way that speaks to the values of the organization. I would say, aside from the general pressure of there being so many great stories out there that we wish we could devote resources to, I think we're respected enough as being an independent publication that there's not that kind of pressure to adjust our coverage. It's really kind of self-directed pressure, and how do we use what are admittedly some fairly scarce resources to cover a huge beat. I mean, the Catholic Church encompasses so much of life in the United States right now, whether it's healthcare, higher ed, secondary education, the charity landscape, parish life, and there's only so many writers and editors. So it's more self-directed pressure. How do we decide which story is going to be elevated that day or that week? Meaning that three or four other stories are not going to be. I would say that's the pressure that I feel and our reporters and editors feel is how do we decide among so many worthy stories what we can commit resources to?
Great. Um, Sort of, and you just kind of talked about your North Star a little bit. This member has a question around how do you see your Catholicism informing reporting and the decisions that you make as an editor?
Yeah, it's an interesting balance, I think, for anyone who is Catholic and is covering the Catholic Church, whether it's for something like the New York Times or Washington Post, or for something like America, which is an official part of the church. NCR is somewhere in the middle of that. It's a publication devoted to covering Catholicism through a lens informed by Catholic values, but also like I've been reiterating over this call, fiercely independent. So, as a Catholic myself, I'm invested in making sure the institution thrives. And I think part of that is highlighting great stories of hope and inspiration, fun stories. But a big part of that, too, is accountability journalism, making sure that the leaders are being accountable to the flocks that they shepherd, making sure the resources that go to Catholic institutions are being used to do the important work, the gospel focused work that they say they're going to do. It's really not letting love for an institution color how we cover the church, but recognizing that my love for the institution means we have to cover the church really well and really thoroughly. So for me, I've been doing this for a number of years at a secular news outlet that covered the church with particular rigor, the Boston Globe, at a church affiliated outlet, America, run by the Jesuits, and now, like I said, something sort of in the middle. So I've navigated that in different ways over the years, and a month in, I'm learning what that means for here. But ultimately, I think it's wanting to do the kind of journalism that brings truth to whatever is happening in the church or the wider world.
One other question that a participant just submitted. The statements from NCR editors at key moments over the last year have been exceptionally valuable in these very challenging times, especially where the administration is implementing countless actions that are at odds with the gospel. Will those will the courageous NCR editor statements and articles continue to be implemented?
I hope so. I agree. Even before joining the team, I was reading some of the editorials, some of the columns by in-house staff, some of the commentary that we had been published by outside contributors, and found them really hopeful. It is a uniquely challenging time in the country right now, and I think both being given news about how Catholic leaders are trying to make a difference, reading editorials calling out some of the injustice that we're seeing. That's an important goal of mine. We have some really talented, thoughtful journalists in-house who are writing their own columns, who are helping to make sense of events. We have an editorial going up this week, both praising some church leaders, some bishops who have spoken out powerfully, and also challenging other church leaders who have not spoken out yet. So that kind of thoughtful analysis and commentary is a priority of mine, both because I benefited from it when I was a reader of NCR, and now that I'm on the team here, I see how important it is to our wider community. And we do have this unique opportunity in the Catholic media space to provide the kind of thoughtful analysis and commentary that does bring some light in these fairly dark times.
Great. I think we probably have time for one more question. Um, and I think this is a great one to go out on. You mentioned how grateful you are. A lot of the people you've connected with since you got here just say they want to see NCR thrive. What does a thriving NCR look like to you in the years ahead?
That's a great question. Some immediate thoughts. Thank you for whoever asked this question. Did kind of tee up a nice closing to the conversation. Some immediate thoughts. If you are subscribing, keep subscribing. Thank you for doing that. If you're able to offer a gift on top of your subscription to be part of this membership group, thank you for doing that. Uh, Tell your friends about NCR, share our content on your social media. Do what you can to really become a champion of this kind of independent reporting on the Catholic Church that clearly means a lot to you. You're taking out time out of your day to watch this conversation. Do what you can to help promote NCR at your parish, at the organization you volunteer at your Catholic healthcare network or hospital. Just really promote the mission of the organization, promote our content, share our articles. If you can, make introductions. There's a great team here of journalists. If you have story ideas, be in touch with any of the editors, any of the writers. If you have ideas about advancement, if you know folks who might want to support this mission, be in touch with James and his team. Just know that this really is a community endeavor. It's a small team here. We're well positioned to undertake this work well. We are always in need of assistance when we can, whether it's editorially, financially, and without you reaching out to us to let us know what's on your mind, what resources we might explore, editorially, where we might dig around a little bit. We can't do it on our own. We need you to be part of this. So I'm grateful that there is a strong community already. We need it to grow. We need to bring more folks in. We need to make sure we're reaching the next generation of Catholics. So whatever you can do to help us in any of those areas, just be in touch. We have a responsive team here, and we want you to be part of this endeavor with us.
Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing a bit more about yourself and your work with NCR, the vision you have. I know everyone here probably learned quite a bit about you, and is looking forward to seeing your role in action as NCR continues to be the source of credible and independent journalism for the church.